So, physicochemical properties of the drug. So, thorough evaluation of the properties is essential in case of safe parenteral dosage form. Why physicochemical properties are important? Why the evaluation of physicochemical properties are important? We have already studied all important points under the chapter, that is pre-formulation studies. And in pre-formulation studies, we come to know what are the different factors which will affect the final dosage form, like the solubility, stability, pH, pKa. How this factor will affect the preparation of final dosage form. We have already covered this point. So how we comes to decision that we have to prepare the parental dosage form. So based on the BCS classification, based on the physicochemical properties, we if the drug is having class 2 and class 4 drug, BCS classification 2 and 4 means those drugs which are having poor solubility, they are the ideal candidate for the parenteral preparations. As they are having poor solubility, they will not be absorbed from the oral route, and that's why we are going to prepare their parenteral preparation, so that it will directly enter into your systemic circulation and there will be no problem of solubility. Then physical chemical factors may significantly affect the development of parenteral dosage form. Obviously, physicochemical properties are having influence on the development of parenteral dosage form. Last time we have seen that the various drugs are available in various form: amorphous, crystalline, it may be hydrate, anhydrous form. So all of these physicochemical properties having the very much influence on final parenteral dosage form. So we must have to consider each and every steps before preparing the final dosage form. And the important properties before preparing the parenteral is solubility and rate of dissolution. On the basis of solubility, we are going to decide whether we have to prepare the parenteral or not. And other important factors that will affect the parenteral is the physical state of the drug, that is whether it is crystalline or amorphous, particle size of the drug, and perhaps the formulation pH. So these are the other important factors which will again affect the parenteral formulations. Let us study the first physicochemical property, that is crystal characteristics. As we know that the drugs are available in two different crystalline forms. As you can see in this image, it is having different crystal shape, cubic shape, hexagon, needle shape. Likewise, in crystal characteristics, we have also studied that some drugs are available in amorphous, some crystalline, some hydrate, anhydrous form. So as we discussed that the anhydrous form is rapidly soluble as compared to the hydrate form. Amorphous is having very good solubility as compared to the crystal form. So all of these crystal characteristics we have to consider before preparing the final parenteral dosage form. For example, cephalosporin. So these are prepared by the sterile crystallization technique. Sterile crystallization technique means what? It is different to general crystallization technique. Sterile means as we are going to prepare the parenteral dosage form, we must have to consider only the sterile techniques. So by means of sterile technique, we can prevent the accidental entry of microorganism into your parenteral preparation. As we have seen that the parenteral preparations are always free from microbes and the pyrogen, and if there is a presence of single pyrogen, it may causes the serious side effect after administration to the patient. Patient's body temperature may goes on rising. So we have to completely avoid the entry of microorganism into the final preparation. So if you are going to prepare any crystal, the preparation of crystal must be through the sterile crystallization technique, so that we can avoid the entry of microorganism into our final preparation. Yes. That is, if you want to get the uniform crystal form, habit, density and size distribution. Suppose you have prepared some crystal which is having a cubic shape structure, having the size of about 1 mm, 1 mm, having the density of about 1 cubic density. So whatever the crystal you have prepared today, if you are expecting that same characteristics must be present even after 1 year, then the crystallization process, then we have to control the crystallization process. If you want to get the same product from day to day, how to get the same product from day to day? By controlling the crystallization process. And how to control the crystallization process? By means of, if you want to grade the uniform product, strict adherence to procedure must be achieved. And uh, and how to get the uniform product? By controlling the pH, rate of addition, solvent concentration, purity, temperature, and mixing rate. So by controlling all of this environmental condition, we can achieve the uniform product from day to day. Suppose if you are going to buy some biscuits from the market, Parle biscuits or whatever the biscuits you are going to purchase. So whatever the taste present for the today or after 1 year, or whatever the color of biscuit present for today or after 1 year, it will be always uniform. There will be no change in color or the taste of your biscuit. So in the same way, if you want to get the uniform product, you have to control all these environmental parameters so that you will get the uniform product throughout the year. So how to control the parameter? That is pH, temperature, mixing rate, addition of solvent and solvent concentration. If you are going to keep all these parameter constant throughout the year, then it is confirmed that you will get the uniform product. For example, if you are going to prepare sterile ceftazidime pentahydrate, the rate of when the crystallization process for sterile ceftazidime pentahydrate was modified to increase the density and reduce the volume of filled dose, means sometime the scientist was trying to increase the density and reducing the volume of filled dose of the sterile ceftazidime pentahydrate. So when they used to increase the density, at that time they observed that the rate of dissolution increased significantly. So these are the sterilization process or the crystallization process which will affect the final solubility or dissolution rate of your drug. So we must have to control all of the crystallization processes by controlling all of these parameters like pH, temperature, mixing rate, solvent concentration, and the rate of solvent. Each crystallization procedure has to be designed to ensure the sterility and minimize the particulate contamination. So whenever we are going to prepare any crystal, we have to ensure the sterility. There should not be any contamination by means of any microorganism or any particulate contamination. So entire process, throughout the process, we have to confirm the sterility. We have to prepare all the crystal in aseptic condition so that there will be no accidental contamination of the parenteral products. And the changes such as using absolute alcohol instead of 95% alcohol can destroy the crystalline structure. Yesterday we already discussed that. If under the specification of BSP or IP or any other pharmacopoeia, if it is mentioned that the absolute ethyl alcohol to be used while washing the crystal, and if you are using 95% ethanol, means which is having 5% of the water, so this 5% of the water will be responsible to destroy the crystalline structure, especially in case of the hydrate structure. If you are having a crystalline form which is hydrate in the nature, so this 5% of the water will be responsible to destroy the structure of your crystalline product. So that's why whatever the mention under specification, always we have to use that solvents only. So this is all about the crystal characteristics. Then chemical modification of the drug. So as you can see in this chemical reaction, this is the salicylic acid. When it reacts with the acetic anhydride, there is formation of acetyl salicylic acid, which is also called as aspirin. You might be very well known about the aspirin tablets, along with the formation of side product, that is acetic acid. So this acetyl group from acetyl anhydride reacts with the salicylic acid and there is formation of acetyl salicylic acid. So why we are going for this chemical modification? If you see the characteristics of this salicylic acid, if you check the pharmacokinetics of this salicylic acid, you will observe that the salicylic acid causes the serious gastric irritation and the gastric ulcers. So that's why there is need of chemical modification. Once the H group get replaced with the acetyl group, there is formation of acetyl salicylic acid, and this acetyl salicylic acid is not having any side effects of gastric irritation or gastric ulcer. So in this way, by means of chemical modification, we can achieve the desired characteristics, or we can overcome the serious side effects of any drug. So the chemical modification of drug is important for improvement of the properties of the drug by means of chemical modification. So the chemical modification is required for the improvement of properties. And why it is important? To increase the stability, alter the solubility, enhance the teapot action, avoid the formulation difficulty, and possibly to decrease the pain on the site of injection. So that's why chemical modification is important. Suppose the drug is, suppose you are having XYZ which is undergoes hydrolytic degradation. Mean in presence of water it undergoes hydrolytic degradation. Then just go for the chemical modification. So instead of soluble form, you can prepare insoluble form. If it is present in insoluble form, then there will be no effect of water and the drug will not undergoes hydrolytic degradation. So in this way, by means of chemical modification, you can increase the stability or you can alter the solubility. Modified drug that converts back to the active parent is defined as the product. Sometime we are going to prepare the product. Suppose for example you are having penicillin. Suppose penicillin is not having good solubility or it is not having good permeability, then we are going to prepare the benzathine penicillin. So this benzathine penicillin is called as prodrug. So this benzathine penicillin is initially it is not in active form. Active form is penicillin, but this penicillin is having difficulties like low solubility and low permeability. So that's why we are going to prepare the product that is benzathine penicillin. Now this benzathine penicillin will be having a high solubility, and because of high solubility it will rapidly dissolve and again it will be absorbed. Once it is absorbed, then in the body this benzathine penicillin will be converted into active form, that is penicillin. So this prodrug get converted into active drug when it enters into your body. So that's why we are going to prepare the prodrug of some active entities. In the same way, like procaine penicillin, metronidazole phosphate, or chloramphenicol sodium succinate. So these are all type of prodrugs. So why we are going to prepare the products? So if the drug is having any solubility issues, then we can prepare the product. Once the product get absorbed, then it will again convert it into its active form and it will show its therapeutic effect. Then preparation of salts of organic compound. Just like that, the diclofenac. Diclofenac is having poor solubility, but once you prepare its salt form, that is diclofenac sodium, now it is very soluble in the water. So just by means of chemical modification, we can improve the properties of your any drug entities. And these salts of the organic compounds are generally given by intramuscular or intravenous injection. And if the solubility of drug is to be reduced, may prepare water insoluble salt. As we discussed, why to reduce the solubility? Generally, we are trying to increase the solubility of drug so that it will be rapidly absorbed and show its therapeutic effect. But there are some drug in which we are trying to reduce the solubility. Why? Because of their high solubility in the water, they undergoes hydrolytic degradation. And if the drug is present in insoluble form, it will not solubilize by the drug and it will not undergoes hydrolytic degradation. And that's why we are going to prepare the insoluble salts, just like procaine penicillin G. Here's the example is procaine penicillin G. So this procaine penicillin G is the insoluble salts of penicillin. The next is the polymorphism. What is the polymorphism? It is the ability of the drug to exist in different polymorphs. That is called as polymorphism. And conversion of one polymer to another may cause a significant change in physical properties. Last time we have seen that chloramphenicol is available in three crystalline forms, three polymorphs A, B, and C. And out of this A, B, C, only B polymorph is active. So before going to prepare the final parental preparation, we have to check that whether this morph whether this crystalline polymorph is of A, B or C. Once it is confirmed that the chloramphenicol is available in B type, then only we can prepare the parental preparation. Otherwise, we will not go for parental preparation if it is available in A type or C type. Polymorphs can affect the solubility and dissolution rate. Just we are discussing case of chloramphenicol B. Chloramphenicol B is having very good solubility and dissolution rate as compared to the chloramphenicol A and C. The substances that form polymorphs must be evaluated so that form used to in stable particular solvent system. Means before going to prepare the final parental preparation, first we have to confirm whether the given drug is of A type, B type or C type or whatever the polymorphs available in the nature. Then the physical stresses that occurs during the suspension manufacture may also give rise to the changes in crystal form. Physical stresses means the presence of pH, temperature, humidity. All of these physical stresses can also affect the suspension manufacturing. So that's why that also we have to control. The next is the pH and pKa. Last time we have seen that this there are most of the drugs which are having pH dependent solubility. So if the drug is solubilized at pH 3, it means that we have to maintain that pH while administering that parental whatever the preparation you are going to prepare, either oral, parental or anything. Whatever the solubility is there, suppose the drug is highly soluble in the acidic environment or at up to pH 2 or 3, then we are trying to solubilize drug only at that environment so that it will be solubilized to maximum extent and it will give its maximum effect. So this pH and pK helps to assure the physical and chemical stability of the chemical and physical stability as well as to maximize or minimize the solubility. Then physical and chemical data that to be considered before final parental preparation is, apart from pH and pK, other physicochemical data, that is optical activity, pH solubility profile, pH stability profile, polymorphism, potential solvent formation, molecular structure and weight, melting point, thermal profile, particle size, shape, hygroscopicity, potential, ionization constant and the light stability. So apart from pH and pKa, we have to study all of these physicochemical properties before preparing the parental preparation. Once your drug remains stable after observing all of these physicochemical properties, then only we will prepare the parental preparation. The next one is the additives. Suppose at every morning if you want to get refresh, you want to take a cup of tea, and the active ingredient which is present in your cup of tea is the caffeine which is present in your tea powder. So why can't you do one thing? Once you wake up in the morning, just take a teaspoonful of tea powder and take it as it is. So it will also give the same effect. So then why to boil the water or milk and add all other ingredient and take the cup of tea? Is it really required? So in that case, why it is required to add all other ingredient like milk, sugar. If you want some flavoring agents like you can also add ginger or cardamom. You can also add uh, other ingredient so that the taste will be very good. So because tea powder is not easy to take, it is not palatable with your taste. It is very bitter in the taste, and that's why we cannot directly take a teaspoonful of tea powder. So instead of taking teaspoonful of powder, we are going to boil this teaspoon full of tea powder along with water or the milk. We are going, in order to increase the taste, we are going to add some sugar, we are going to add some milk, we are going to add some ginger so that it will give a very good flavor, and then finally you are having a very good cup of tea. Now this cup of tea will give you a very good refreshment. So in the same way, if you want to prepare a parental preparation, only drug is not choice. Along with the drug, you also require some additives so that you will get the stable formulation. So why the additives are required? To maintain the pharmaceutical stability, control the product attributes, ensure the stability and to aid in the parenteral administration. So that's why additives are very important. To maintain the pharmaceutical stability means what? Suppose you are going to prepare the suspension or emulsion. So suspension and emulsions you cannot uh, expect without emulsifier or suspending agent. Without emulsifier or suspending agent, you cannot prepare a suspension or emulsion. Suppose we are going to omit this suspending agent, then your preparation may become unstable. All particles, in case of suspension, all particles will settle down and they will form a hard cake, which is again not possible to redisperse. And that's why consideration of surface active agent is very important if you want to prepare stable suspension, or consideration of emulsifier is very important if you want to prepare emulsion. So that's why in order to ensure the pharmaceutical stability, additives are very important. Suppose your drug undergoes oxidative degradation, then we must have to add some antioxidant. Suppose your drug undergoes microbial degradation, microbial contamination, then in order to prevent the microbial growth, we have to add some preservatives so that it will prevent the microbial growth. So in this way, additives play very important role in order to prepare the stable pharmaceutical products. So these substances includes antioxidant, antimicrobial agent, buffer, bulking material, chelating agents, inert gases, solubilizing agent, and the protectant. So we must be aware of the type of additives used. If you want to use antimicrobial agent, then whether that antimicrobial agent is compatible with your drug or not, because all of these additives again is a source of incompatibility. All of these additives may react with your drug and it causes the incompatibility. Incompatibility means your drug and excipient may get react with each other and they form side product, and this incompatibility can easily check by visual observation of your product. Suppose on the day one your product remains clear in the nature, but after uh, 1 week, 2 week, or after a month your drug may become brown in color or there may be any coloration. So this coloration, production of these colors stands for that there is incompatibility. Your drug get incompatible with the other ingredient and that's why there is incompatibility. For example, drug formulations containing the preservative, that is benzalkonium chloride, which is positively charged. Suppose you are going to add the preservative, for example, benzalkonium chloride. This benzalkonium chloride is having positive charge, and suppose you are going to mix this benzalkonium chloride with the Ionix drug, then there may be reaction in between your benzalkonium chloride along with the anionic drug, and that's why we have to take care of this type of preservatives. Next ingredient, next additive is the antioxidant. So we know that the antioxidants, these are the substances that oxidize itself and prevents the oxidation of your active drug. And what are the examples? That is bisulfites, metasulfites, and the sulfites. So these are very important category of the antioxidants which are majorly used in your parenteral preparations. These antioxidants maintain the product stability over the shelf life of the product. Over the shelf life of the product means there is expiry date mentioned on each and every product. So this antioxidant is used to maintain the stability of the product throughout the shelf life. If the shelf life is up to 2 to 3 years, so it means that the antioxidant going to maintain the stability of your product up to 2 to 3 years. It will prevent the oxidation of your drug throughout the shelf life. Then, irrespective of which salt is added to the solution, antioxidant activity depends on the final concentration of thio compound. So, whatever the concentration of antioxidant you are adding, its activity will depends on the thio compounds present in your preparation and also the final pH of your preparation. So that we have to consider before preparing the final preparation. So while undergoing oxidation, sulfides sometimes get converted into sulfate. Active form of the antioxidant is bisulfite, metasulfite, and the sulfite. And sometimes these sulfides get converted into sulfates and other species, and it will react with the certain drug. It is not expected that this sulfide get converted into sulfate. and if it is get converted, then it is sure that this sulfate will react with the other active drug, for example epinephrine. Sulfite levels are determined by the reactivity of the drug. If you want to check the sulfite concentration at any time, by today or after a year, then at that time you can determine the sulfite concentration by reacting with the drug or the type of container or single or multiple doses. Sulfites have been reported to cause the allergic reaction in some asthmatics. So if there is any asthmatic patient, then in that case you have to mention on your product that this uh, parental preparation contains sulfides, and that's why it is not to be administered to the asthmatic patient. It should be denoted in red color or in bold color on the final preparation, so that the pharmacist or doctor will convey this message up to the patient that this preparation contain antioxidant, that is sulfide, and it may cause the allergic reaction. So this type of products will not be given to the asthmatic patient. Next one is the antimicrobial agent. So the antimicrobial agent, these are the substances which can prevent the microbial growth. Suitable preservative system is required in all multiple dose parenteral. Mostly it antimicrobial requires in the multiple dose parenteral preparation. Why requires in multiple dose parenteral preparation? You might observe that when you visit the doctor is going to inject the needle into the vial, take the required amount of drug, and then it is going to inject to the patient. So daily if there are 10 to 15 patients, every time doctor have to inject the needle into the vial, means 10 to 15 times doctor is going to inject the needle into the vials, and at every time there is chances of contamination of that final product. So that's why it requires the antimicrobial agent, whereas the single dose container generally does not require the antimicrobial agent. Why multiple dose container only required? Because multiple times this final preparation having chances of the microbial contamination. Multiple time doctor is going to inject the needle into the vials, so that's why there are maximum chances of microbial contamination, and that's why it needs the antimicrobial agent. But single dose container do not requires the antimicrobial agent. Generally it not required. Suppose there is a vial of 5 ml or 10 ml, and this complete dose is instead of vial we consider the ampoules. Suppose it requires to administer whole preparation at a time. Doctor is going to break that ampoule, take whole content of the container at a time and inject to the patient. So for the single time, only one time this preparation is allowed to administer to the patient, and there is no chances of contamination. That's why single dose container generally does not require the antimicrobial agents. But preservative may be added to single dose parenteral. Why? Only in some cases. Suppose your drug cannot be terminally sterilized. Generally, parenteral preparations are terminally sterilized by means of autoclaving. Autoclaving means at 121 degrees Celsius, 15 lbs pressure, and for 20 minutes. So, at this given temperature, pressure, and pressure, your drug is allowed to terminally sterilize in the autoclave. But if your drug is temperature sensitive, if your drug is sensitive to temperature, then we cannot sterilize your product by means of autoclaving. Only in that case you can add the antimicrobial agent. Otherwise, single dose container do not require the antimicrobial agents like preservatives. So the formulation scientist must consider the interaction between the preservative and other component. So again, before preparing the final preparation, we have to see that whether the selected preservative is having the chemical reaction with your drug or not. If the preservative is compatible with your drug, then only you can prepare the final preparation. For example, proteins can bind with the thimerosal type of preservative and reducing the preservative efficacy. So that's why we have to consider this type of product. Protein should not be combined with the thiomersal type of preservative. Partitioning of preservative into the micellar phase of oil phase. Suppose you are adding any preservative in the emulsion type of parental emulsion. So some preservative can suppose the preservative is oil soluble in the nature, then it will start to enter into the micellar phase of oil phase, and time by time preservative concentration present in the external phase may reduce. So in this way you may not get the antimicrobial effect, because suppose you are going to add 1% of the preservative. Suppose by today if you are going to add 1% of the preservative, and after 1 month suppose 0.5% of preservative get enter into the oil phase of your emulsion, then in that case preservative concentration get reduced from 1% to 0.5%. So this only, and the remaining 5% is not responsible for antimicrobial activity. So your final preparation may undergoes microbial degradation, the preparation may undergoes microbial attack. So that's why before preparing the final preparation we have to consider the partitioning of preservative into the micellar phase also. So in this way we have to study the compatibility study of preservative along with the drug. We have to study the partitioning of preservative into the micellar phase of emulsion. Then preservative efficacy testing should be done on proposed form to assure the effective preservative concentration. The next one is the buffers. You know very well buffers. Buffers, these are the substances that can resist the change in pH. And the many drugs require certain pH range to maintain the product stability. Suppose today you have prepared some final parental preparation and its pH is about 3 to 3.5. And without buffer, suppose after a year the pH may get changed because of certain environmental factor, because of some temperature, humidity or anything. So this pH change can be reduced by means of the buffer. So buffer, these are the substances that will maintain your required pH, that will resist the change in pH. Drug solubility may strongly dependent on pH of the solution. We already studied this. The most of the drugs are having pH dependent solubility. Suppose this solubility profile of phenobarbital as shown in this image. You can see that on the y-axis there is percent phenobarbital which gets solubilized weight by volume, and on the x-axis there is pH range, or there is aqueous solubility. So at pH 8 only 0.5% of the drug was solubilized, but at pH 9 1.5% of the drug gets solubilized, and up to pH 10 3% of the phenobarbital gets solubilized. Means we can say that the phenobarbital type of the drugs are having pH dependent solubility. If the pH get changed, it will directly affect the solubility of your drug. Factor that influence the pH are the product degradation, container and stopper effects, diffusion of the gases through the closure, and the effect of gases in the product. So all of these factors are responsible for change in the pH. Product degradation means suppose your product is present in suppose we are going to consider the paracetamol. Today it is present in active form. Suppose after a time it get degraded and get converted into its side product, and because of the side product there may be change in pH. So in this way container is also responsible for the change in pH. Again the stopper, diffusion of gases, and again the effect of other gases are also responsible for the change in pH. And that's why buffer system is very important. And what is a buffer? Buffer is a weak base and a salt of weak base. Again it is a weak acid or salt of weak acid. So these are the buffers, and the common examples of buffers which are used in the parentals are acetate, citrates and the phosphates. The next one is the chelating agent. So chelating agent, these are the substances that can form complex with the various metals. And why it is important? Because there are most of the drugs which can form complex with the metal, and the activity of the drug can reduce. Suppose XYZ drug is present in your final preparation, and it will be active until and unless present in its free form. And suppose accidentally some metal ions enter into your preparation. Metal ion may enter from the containers, and the drug starts to form complex with these metal ions. Once your drug form complex with the metal ion, your drug may get uh, degraded. It is not of any use. So that's why we have to prevent the complex of your drug along with the metal ion. And how we can prevent the complexion of drug with the other metal ion? Initially, you can add some chelating agent into your preparation before addition of the drug. So if there is any presence of any metal ions, this chelating agent will form complex with the metal ion, and then the presence of any free metal ions will be reduced. After reaction of chelating agent with the metal ion, there will be no free ions in your preparation. Then you can dissolve your drug, and your drug will remains active. The sources of metal contaminations are the raw material impurities, means whatever the materials you are adding, that may be a source of metal ions. There is solvent such as water. Water is also a source of metal ions. Rubber stoppers, containers, equipment employed in the manufacturing of process. Again, all of these are the sources of metal ions. Water is also a good source of metal ion. It contains the sodium, calcium, like metal ions. Then the rubber closure is also containing the metal ions. Then the container, which is suppose we are talking about the glass container, which is made up of purely the alkali and alkaline earth metal, and there are 100% chances of that this metal ions will enter into your preparation. And the equipment, suppose sometime the metal which is used in the construction of equipment, these metals are also react with the uh, your drug product. So that's why before preparing the parental preparation, we have to consider all of these sources of the metal ions. The most widely used chelating agent is the disodium edetate, that is edetate disodium derivative and its salt. Citric and tartaric acids are also used as a chelating agents. Then the inert gases. Another means of enhancing the product integrity of oxygen sensitive medicaments. As we already studied under antioxidants, that most of the drug undergoes oxidative degradation. In presence of oxygen, your drug may undergoes oxidation. So how we can minimize the chances of oxidative degradation? By removing the presence of oxygen. Whatever the oxygen present in your container, whatever the oxygen, dissolved oxygen present in your vehicles like water generally contains also the dissolved oxygen. So before using any solvent or before using any container, first we have to remove the traces of this oxygen. And how to remove this dissolved oxygen? By purging with the nitrogen or boiling the water to reduce the dissolved oxygen. If you are using a container, first we have to transfer nitrogen gas. Once you transfer the high velocity nitrogen gas through a container, it will remove all oxygen present in your container. Once you boil the water, it will remove all dissolved oxygen present in your water, which is used as a vehicle. So by purging the nitrogen or by boiling the water, we can remove the dissolved oxygen. Container is also purged before filling. Before filling the final product, we have to purge the container with the nitrogen or argon gas, so that it will remove the oxygen present in your container. Then butyl, always try to use the butyl rubber closure, because this rubber closure can resist the gas permeation into the container. They are resist to the gas. They will not allow the entry of gas into the container. So by using all of this, by taking the care of all of this, we can reduce the oxidative degradation. By using the butyl rubber, or by purging the nitrogen gas into the final container, or by using the boiled water which will remove the dissolved oxygen, By taking care of all of these factors, we can prevent the oxidative degradation. Then solubilizing agent and the surfactant. So what is meant by solubilizing agent and surfactant? So these are the substances which can reduce the interfacial tension. They get accumulate at interface present in between two immiscible phases. Suppose we are talking about the suspension. The solid particles are insoluble in the vehicle. So there is an interface which can resist their homogeneous mixture. So interface will not allow to mix your solid particles with the external phase. So in order to reduce the interfacial tension, we are going to add the surface active agent. So surface active agent will accumulate and interface exists between the solid and liquid phase. It will reduce the interfacial tension, and then only your solid particles can easily redispersible into the vehicle phase. And when we are talking about the emulsion, again, when two phases are immiscible with each other, you can add the emulsifier or the surface active agent. So this emulsifier again accumulate at the interface exists between two immiscible liquids. It will reduce the surface tension, and both phases will behave as a single phase or the homogeneous mixture. And because of this emulsifier or surface active agent, both phases again will not get separate out. It will remain stable. So surface active agent is used to disperse the water insoluble drug as a colloidal dispersion, and the drug solubility can be increased by means of solubilizing agent or by the non-aqueous solvents. When using solubilizing agent, formulator must consider their effects on the safety and stability of the drug. And surfactants are used for wetting and to prevent the crystal growth in the suspension. So surfactant is having a those surfactant we have to use which are having very good wetting properties. Very good wetting properties means these are having ability to reduce the surface tension and improve the wetting properties of the given solid material. If the given solid material is strongly hydrophobic in the nature, means once you add the powder it will remain separated, means because of the hydrophobic nature it will not mix with the water. So once you add the wetting agent, so what is the role of wetting agent? Wetting agent as a surfactant. So what is the role of this wetting agent? It will reduce the surface tension or the interfacial tension exist in between that solid surface and liquid. Once the interfacial tension reduce, wetting properties will be improved. Now your drug we can easily mix with the external liquid phase. Then surfactants are used quite extensively in parenteral suspension for wetting powders and to provide the acceptable syringeability. Acceptable syringeability means if the drug remains suspended at the bottom of container and if you are going to take this into the syringe, so as this particle remains settled down at the bottom, it may block your syringe. Or when we are going to inject this preparation into the patient, as the particles are not redispersed, it may block your syringe also. If the particle remains sediment at a bottom, or if it is not readily redispersible, then there are maximum chances of that it may block the syringe and the preparation will not be easily syringeable. So in that case, if you add the surfactant, your solid particles will remain suspended, it will not settle down easily, and it will be having very good syringeability. They are also used in emulsion for solubilizing the steroids and fat soluble vitamins. So this is all about the suspension. Now let us discuss the importance of isotonicity. Isotonicity means iso means same and tonicity means pressure. The same pressure on both the side, and we can achieve this same pressure on both sides by maintaining the same ionic concentration on both sides of the membrane. And why the isotonicity is important in case of parenteral preparation? It is important in case of parenteral preparation. Those are given mainly in case of intravenous injections. So isotonicity is important, especially in case of those injections which are given intravenously. So because of the osmotic pressure changes and the resulting exchange of ionic species across the red blood cell membrane, the non-isotonic solution, particularly if given in quantities larger than 100 ml, can cause the hemolysis of red blood cell. Means if the solution is not isotonic with your blood, if the solution is not isotonic, not isotonic means the ionic concentration present in your blood and the ionic concentration present in your parental preparation is different. And what happened, if the ionic concentration is same, then there will be no harmful effect on your red blood cell. If the ionic concentration of your blood and ionic concentration of your injection is same, in that case it is said to be isotonic. Means if the solution is isotonic, the osmotic pressure present in both your blood and your parental preparation, it will remain same. So if the osmotic pressure is same, there is no harmful effect on the RBCs. But if the ionic concentration present in your parental preparation is more, it contains the more ionic concentration, and because of more ionic concentration it will be having more osmotic pressure, and because of this more osmotic pressure your RBCs may undergoes rupturing. Your RBCs may get rupture because of high osmotic pressure of your parental preparation. Your parental preparation contain low ionic concentration, means low osmotic pressure. At that time your RBCs may get swells to a larger extent and it may undergoes bursting. So this is the effect of hypertonic solution and the hypotonic solution, and that's why we are always expecting that your parental preparation must be always isotonic in the nature. If it is isotonic in the nature, then there will be no harmful effect on your RBCs. Dextrose, sodium chloride, potassium chloride is commonly used to achieve the isotonicity in the parental formula. If you are expecting that your parental preparation must be isotonic with the blood, then you can add 0.9% of NaCl in your final solution. So this 0.9% of sodium chloride said to be isotonic with the blood. If you are going to add 0.9%, then there is no harmful effect on the RBCs. If in mistake you are going to add 1.5% of the NaCl, the solution may become hypertonic and your RBCs may get rupture. And if you are instead of 0.9%, suppose you are adding 0.5% of NaCl, then the solution become hypotonic and your RBCs may get swell and again it get burst because of the low osmotic pressure. So that's why we have to maintain the isotonicity while going to prepare the parental preparation. And isotonicity can be achieved by means of adding the required quantities of dextrose, sodium chloride or the potassium chloride. So this is all about the